Today, we're diving deep into the invisible systems that guard a company's financial health. We're not talking about security guards or vaults. We're talking about automated controls that work silently inside the software that runs, well, everything. I mean, think about it. When you look at the financials for some massive global company, how can you be sure those numbers are right? One tiny glitch in a calculation, repeated millions of times, could throw things off by a staggering amount. So yeah, how on earth can we trust the data? Well, the answer is a whole web of automated checks and balances that are built right into a company's applications. You can think of them as these digital gatekeepers, making sure every single transaction is handled correctly, from the second it's entered to the moment it shows up on a final report. To really get a handle on how all this works, let's use an analogy that I think makes it super clear. Picture a company's entire IT system as a house, and this house really has two parts that matter: the foundation it's built on and all the appliances running inside it. Okay, first up, we have the application controls, or ACs for short. In our house, these are the fancy, high-tech appliances. They do very specific automated jobs. Like a smart oven that knows exactly how long to cook something, or a plumbing system that automatically adjusts water pressure. And then you have the IT general controls, or ITGCs. Now, these are not the appliances. These are the foundation of the entire house. This is the concrete, the wiring in the walls, the main security system at the front door. They don't do one specific task, but they are absolutely essential for all the appliances to work safely and correctly. And this is where that whole analogy really clicks into place. The general controls, the ITGs, are that foundation. They control who gets the keys to the house, that's your system access. They control how you're allowed to make renovations, that's change management. And the application controls, the ACs, are all those appliances that totally depend on that stable foundation to do their jobs, like calculating sales tax or running payroll. So here's the absolute key takeaway. Your amazing top-of-the-line smart oven is completely worthless if the electrical grid in your house is a mess, right? It just won't work. And it's exactly the same here. An automated financial control can't be trusted one bit if the general IT controls, like who has permission to change the software's code, are weak. The foundation has to be solid, period. Okay, so how do we actually know this whole system is working the way it's supposed to? Well, this is where auditors come in. They're basically like home inspectors. Their job is to come in and check everything, both the foundation and the appliances, to make sure the house is safe and sound. And they've got a specific toolkit to do this. First, they ask a lot of questions and just watch how the system works. Then they dig in and inspect the evidence, like system logs that show a control actually firing. But the most powerful tool, the gold standard, is that third one: reperformance. Reperformance gives an auditor the absolute highest level of confidence. See, it's not enough to just see that the oven turns on. The auditor basically bakes the cake themselves. They take the same raw ingredients, the data, and run the calculation on their own to see if they get the exact same result as the system. If they do, boom, you can be pretty darn sure that appliance is working perfectly. Now, you can imagine that testing every single appliance in the house from scratch every single year would be a massive amount of work. So auditors have a clever shortcut called benchmarking. The idea is really simple. If you know the house's foundation is still solid and you're confident nobody has messed with the oven since you last checked it, you don't need to bake another cake. You can be reasonably sure it still works. And what's really interesting here is how they make that call. They look at a few key risk factors. For example, is the software application stable, or is it constantly being updated and patched? That's a red flag. Are the controls over who can change the software, our foundation, actually strong? And maybe the business itself has changed in a way that makes the old appliance's logic totally outdated. If those risks on the right start piling up, you know it's time to retest that appliance. So this brings us to a really critical question. What happens when these controls don't work? What's the real cost when the systems we're all relying on start to crumble? When a failure is bad enough, it gets a scary name: a material weakness. And let's be clear, this isn't just a faulty appliance anymore. This is a massive crack running right through the foundation of the house. It means there's a very real possibility that a huge financial error could happen, and nobody would even catch it. And the fallout from that is very, very real. The second a company has to announce it has a material weakness, investor confidence can just evaporate. This quote here says their cost of equity goes up, which is really just a fancy way of saying investors get spooked. They now see the company as a riskier bet, so they demand a higher potential return to invest in a business with a cracked foundation. In fact, some studies have shown pretty significant negative stock market reactions right after one of these announcements. It's a huge flashing warning sign to the market that a company's financial house might not be in order. So, how does this stuff actually happen? Well, it's often something that seems small. It could be a simple mistake in the code's calculation logic. It could be weak security on a really important data file, like an interest rate table, letting someone change it when they shouldn't. Or maybe the system does its job and flags an error, but literally nobody is assigned to actually look at the exception report. These are the kinds of small cracks that can lead to a total collapse. So, what's the solution? How can companies avoid all this? How do you build a financial house that people can actually trust? Well, it all comes down to having a solid blueprint from the very beginning. And that blueprint is pretty straightforward. First, you have to design your controls with a clear purpose and know exactly how they work. Second, you want to automate everything you possibly can, because automated systems don't have bad days or forget steps like humans do. But the most important thing, the absolute non-negotiable, is prioritizing that foundation. Strong IT general controls are the bedrock for everything else. And here's just a brilliant example of that in action. A huge risk for any company is an employee leaving, but their computer access staying active. Now, you could rely on a manual checklist for someone in HR to disable their account, but that's slow and people make mistakes. The much, much stronger control is to automate it. The moment an employee is marked as terminated in the HR system, it automatically triggers a process that revokes their access to everything. Instantly. No human error, no delays, no risk. Which really just leaves us with one final crucial question to think about. When you look at the systems that protect financial integrity, you have to ask, is this house built on the solid rock of strong, automated, well-maintained controls? Or is it built on the shifting sand of manual processes and a weak foundation? Honestly, the answer to that question changes everything.